typically, what we do in our annual meetings for Urbana, we go through all the legalism and formal parts that we have to get rid of. Then we adjourn the meeting, and then we talk about the company afterwards on a more fulsome basis. This way, if there's a riot, we get a chance to get through the business part first. Anyway, thank you. Will the meeting come to order? If you haven't been to order, please come to order. I'm Tom Caldwell. I'm President, CEO of Urbana. I want to welcome you to the meeting. With us today are our directors, Beth Cawley. Maybe you could stand and just... Beth Cawley, George Elliott. Don't show the age factor, George. Michael Gundy. And one of our directors, Charlie Panic, he's doing what he should be doing. He's out trying to do some deals. Sylvia Stinson, our Chief Financial Officer. Harry Liu, our General Counsel and Corporate Secretary. Frank Catrali, I saw you there. Oh, he's also our auditors with Deloitte as well. So if you have any questions, you can buttonhole him on the way out. I'll preside over the meeting. Harry is going to act as secretary. And I'll ask Amanda Delio and Laurie Grenton, representatives of TSX Trust, the registrar and transfer agent, to act as scrutineers. The secretary has confirmed that the meeting materials were mailed to shareholders in accordance with the applicable laws on May the 5th. I direct a copy of that declaration of mailing to be attached to the scheduled minutes of the meeting. Prior to this meeting, the scrutineer reported on the common shares present and the number of proxies received on the common shares. I'll call upon the secretary to read that report.
The scrutineer's report states that there are a total of 21 common shareholders present in person or represented by proxy holding 6,148,000 common shares. That meets the quorum requirements of the corporation for the purposes of this meeting.
Thank you, Harry. Now I declare that the notice have been properly given, requisite quorum of shareholders present. This meeting is properly constituted for the transaction of business. For each of the resolutions that follow, only the holders of common shares will be entitled to vote. All the votes at this meeting will be taken by a show of hands. I can report that prior to this meeting, sufficient proxies were voted in favor of each of the matters to be voted at this meeting. Therefore, each of the items set forth in the meeting will be approved at this meeting. Now, the minutes of the last shareholder meeting is the approval of the minutes of the meeting held on the last annual meeting on June 11th. These minutes are available for inspection by shareholders. Unless there's an objection, I do not propose to have the meetings read, and I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
I'm Brendan Caldwell. I'm a common shareholder. I move that the minutes of the shareholders meeting held on June 11th, 2025 be approved.
Thank you. And could I have a second of that motion, please? Michael Gundy, Director. All in favor signify by raising your hands. Contrary, if any? Carried unanimously. The next item of business is placed before this meeting the financial statements of the corporation ended December 31st, 2025. These financial statements, together with a report of the auditor dated March 20th, have been fully made available to all shareholders. Are there any questions on the report or the financial statements? Good. The next is the election of directors. The next item is the election of directors. I declare the meeting open for nominations for the election of directors for the ensuing year or until their successors are appointed.
I nominate Thomas S. Caldwell, Beth Cawley, George D. Elliott, Michael B.C. Gundy, and Charles A.V. Pennick individually and not as a slate for election as directors of the corporation.
Are there any further nominations? I declare the nominations closed. May I have a motion to elect those nominated as directors of the corporation?
I move that each person who's been nominated be elected director of the corporation for the ensuing year or until his or her successor is elected or appointed.
Thank you. Could I have a seconder, please? I'll take Harry Liu, please, as well. All in favor? I'm voting for myself here. Contrary, if any? Yeah, that was Harry. Uh, Carried almost unanimously, and I'll just say unanimously, except for Harry's vote. I declare each of those nominated to have been elected as director of the corporation for the ensuing year, or until his or her successor are elected. The next item of business is the appointment of the auditor for the next year. Now, may I now have a motion to appoint Deloitte LLP as auditor of the corporation?
I move that Deloitte LLP be hereby appointed auditor of the corporation to hold office until the close of the next annual meeting of shareholders or until its successor is appointed at such remuneration as may be fixed by the directors, and the directors are authorized to fix such remuneration.
Thank you. Seconder, please. George Elliott, second it. All in favor? Contrary? Motion carried. I'll speak to the corporation's operation after, as I said, after the formal part of this meeting, and can address any questions at that point in time. At this point, is there any further business to be brought to this meeting? No business. I entertain a motion to terminate the meeting.
I move the meeting be terminated.
Second. Beth Colley, all in favor? Good. Thank you. So we've done the business part here. What I want to do, most years at these annual meetings, I'm sorry, Liz, did you want? Okay, you're supposed to read something, okay. Is it my biography?
Okay, the forward-looking statements. The following presentation may contain certain forward-looking statements within the meaning of the Ontario Securities Act and comparable legislation in other provinces. These forward-looking statements may involve known and unknown risks, uncertainties, and other factors which may cause the actual results or events to differ materially from those expressed, implied, or anticipated in such forward-looking statements. Unless required by applicable securities law, Urbana does not assume any obligation to update these forward-looking statements.
Thank you. Just to translate, that means we're not responsible for anything, apparently, but I hope it makes everybody feel more comfortable. I'm going to drag it out a little bit here to give you the history, but first I want to acknowledge, the team at Urbana that really makes this work. And, Liz Nemovsky, Sylvia Stinson, Harry Liu, Cass Lockwood. These are the teams directly in Urbana that make this work day to day. We are particularly grateful to the team run by Brendan Caldwell at CSL and Caldwell Investment Management. We have a tremendous group of people that really support, and CIM is overall responsible for the investments that we make. And we have some wonderful people there at both teams. Tom Simopoulos, who really does the grinding work for looking at companies that are, you can stand up, Tom, as well. So he does the real grunt work, and I get the glory for it. So that works out fairly well. So thank you. We got a great group of young, Nicole Christakis. I don't know if you're here, Nicole. And anyway, she's not here. She's still with the firm, though, isn't she? She's at back week welcoming people. Okay, well, that's great. And Morgan Pompey, who's not here, was busy running the trading operation. So we have a really, really solid and diverse team at Caldwell Investment Management and Caldwell Securities that make this thing work. And I'm grateful for that. What I want to do is, I want to just bring you the story of Urbana. Urbana was originally incorporated as Macho River Investments. Macho is in, Macho Duck kind of thing, in Urban Township, hence the name Urbana. The properties they held in those days are Macho River, and they later Macho. This is 1947, it was put together. They still had, these were staked by Fred Boylan, who was my father-in-law, and he was a prospector, and he staked a lot of that country. And over the years he came on tough times, but he always kept the six claims in Urban Township. And they were very interesting gold grades, but he kept that for all the years, even though the company fell into I would say, disrepair. It hadn't filled up its forms or anything else for 10 years. It was dormant for a decade. But he was always enthusiastic about those gold claims. And I never knew really whether it's because he firmly believed it or whether it was an old man's dream. I just don't know which. And so my job was to keep those claims, and then I expanded them from 6 to 74 claims. A claim, by the way, is about 40 acres, just to give you a rough idea. And so I expanded the claim group, and we did a little bit of work on the property. This was in the early 80s when I originally took this over. And it was Urban Resources, I think we called it at that time. And so we did work on it. The problem and the challenge was in Urbana is that in the gold property is it's very, we would have really high grade gold and then nothing. And that's described geologically as the property was erratic in terms. So you could drill and you get to wonderful intersections, but there were narrow intersections. A mining has got to be 4 feet because to get equipment in. If you have 1 foot, you have to dilute your grade by basically 3/4. So it was really funny. I had a European investor was interested, and I did explain the property being erratic, and that blessed spell check. It went out overnight to this man and explained that the property was erotic. I had to clarify that the next day. I said, it might be. I have no idea. But at any rate, I kept that property and expanded on it. But it was interesting. In those days, we had to fly in. I had to fly in, fly out with equipment. We had a bulldozer. We had to take it apart, put it on an airplane, fly it in. It was impossible to get through. Very expensive exploration. So we did a little bit of work on the property, and we found even greater values, and we had expanded the group. But what interestingly happened, this property was in the back of Beyond, and bit by bit, people were finding gold around it. And we had a company that come in and staked all the property north of thousands of acres, thousands and thousands of acres, and it's since been taken over by Goldfields, which is a big South African company. And they have found really good results right up to our border. They're not doing anything on the property right now, but with the price of gold, they will be. And there will be several mines in the area in Urbana Township. And that's very encouraging for us. So we're right in the center of their whole massive holdings. And it's a good company to have as a neighbor because South Africa is deep drilling. You're down a mile or two. And when you get down there, you're talking about heat and air conditioning and because you're closer to the magma of the earth. So it's deep drilling because gold mines, they're like a pencil. There's very little on surface, and they plunge and they break and twist. And that's part of the problem of looking for gold mines. It's very expensive drilling. So right now, we have that property on our books at zero, by the way. I don't put a value on it. That's kind of what I call the lottery ticket component of our portfolio. It might be worth nothing, or it could be massive, but we have values there. And eventually, we're not going to be in the mining business. Our goal is to do a deal with Goldfields or somebody and have somebody do the work and hopefully get an upfront cash and the royalties. That's kind of our thinking in that property, but we kept it historically. What I discovered, though, in early 2000s, doing exploration work in the bush is it's tough stuff. You know, it takes you 2 weeks to get one guy with a chainsaw into the bush, and he ended up sawing his toe off, and then you got to get an airplane to get them out of there, kind of thing. It was so much work. And being in the investment business, I'm essentially lazy. It seemed to me that I can make decisions, millions of dollars, and transact, boom, while sitting at my desk. So I converted it to an investment company, 2002. And we still have the mineral thing, but that's about our only mining investment. We have a couple. We own a couple of gold. We own some Agnico Eagle, for example. So that was the background of how it got started. And then Urbana, through the team at Caldwell Investment Management and Caldwell Securities, we started buying seats on exchanges and securities exchanges. We were at one point the largest owner of the New York Stock Exchange. We owned 49 seats in New York before they went public. We were the largest owner of the Chicago Board Option Exchange before they went public. And we owned, I don't know, Brent, 30 plus exchanges around the world, thereabouts. And we understood a little bit about exchanges and where trading takes place. But it was really intellectual arbitrage for us because exchanges, I always keep joking, I did a lot of research. I discovered that not-for-profit companies tend not to generate profits. I know that's a real breakthrough, but if I could take a not-for-profit corporation and convert it into a for-profit company, there could be a step up in value. And we had seen this happen in Toronto, we'd seen it happen in Vancouver, we'd seen it happen in London, seen it happen in Hong Kong, but New York is a very provincial city, because if it hasn't happened in New York, it hasn't happened, it's not relevant. So that was the entry. So we went down to New York and started to buy up seats. And they thought, oh, these nice little guys from Canada, before they recognized they invited in Attila the Hun. And we ended up buying and buying and buying, and then campaigning for the demutualization of seats. That turned out to be an extremely profitable venture for our shareholders, our unit holders, our investors, and indeed for Urbana. It made Urbana, and one of our shareholders vended in his shares, when this all first shares in Urbana, Horizon Kinetics, and we've had a very good long-term relation with them. They own about, I don't know, 16, 17% of our A shares, for example. So we really had a good lift there and continued to invest in a combination of public and private companies. The style is, we tend to go for private and public. See, we have permanent capital. We can invest for 10 years. Doesn't matter to us. So we can take a long view of a company and see it come to maturation. So from that perspective, we have about 50% public, 50% private companies in the thing. And we can take a long view. And of course, a lot of our private companies start out as disasters. I mean, we bought our first seat in the New York Stock Exchange at $2 million a seat. Our next transaction was about a month later, and it dropped to $1 million. I explained to my partners it usually takes me longer to lose money like that, but it happens so quickly. But that's when you decide, when you come in for more. We decided to double down and keep on buying, because we thought we were right, this demutualization thing, because we had seen it. It was more like intellectual arbitrage than a pure play. So that's where we got our start, and that was the structuring of our investment portfolio. Our investment portfolio, one of our shareholders mentioned that we missed a lot of the high-tech move. But having missed a bit of the high-tech move, we tend to go not for high-tech themselves, because frankly, I'm not that smart to evaluate whether the space link is really going to be a great deal or not. We invested in companies that would benefit, companies we understood that could benefit from technology. And there's lots of those, and that's where we could understand the step up to technology. So in our private equities, that tends to be the style. In the public, just to give you an idea, if I took a look at our public portfolio, it's really divided into two components: U.S. financials at the present time and Canadian energy stocks. And let's take a look at the two Canadian energy stocks that we own. The key ones are Whitecap and Tamarack Valley, which are mid-size oil companies. Now, you see, oil and gas is an oversupply. But the one thing with the oil and gas, particularly the oil business, something always happens. Something always blows that equation out of the wall. That has been a fairly good payday for us, and I'll come to that in a few minutes when I go through the individual things. The other thing is U.S. financials. And what you're seeing here is when something goes haywire in the oil and gas business, the oil and gas stocks go up. But when it comes back again, the bank stocks go up, the U.S. bank, because they're economy centric. Is the economy going to do better with reduced energy prices? And so they're almost, it's not a conscious hedge, but they're sort of a hedge, one against the other. Similarly, we own a lot of exchanges. We still own a lot of Chicago-born option exchange. We own a company called Miami Exchange. So we still have a lot of an exchange focus there. And there's some challenges coming in that business as well. So that's kind of the mix. And the funny part is when exchanges go up, banks go down. So there's hedges within the hedge kind of thing. If we look forward in the future, we'll probably be looking at these tremendous deficits that come. We got all this crisis going. We got, President Trump railing through the world, just God knows, it's just chaos all the time. Everybody's saying, well, do you see this is happening, this issue? Everybody's looking at the symptoms. The guy's crazy. Okay, it's ego-driven, and just accept that as a given, and everything else falls off that. But that's good for us because you're going to learn how to play the guy. Because when he threatens to obliterate somebody, oil prices go up, and then like was Iran. You will cease to exist as a civilization at 8 o'clock tonight, and at 7:30. Okay, I'm going to hold it off till 10. Okay, I'm going to give you 10 weeks, then I'm going to obliterate you. Oh, what a guy! This is crazy stuff. I mean, it's just But as a money manager, we thrive on chaos and uncertainty, negativity. That's where the bargains live. Our job is to sift through the ashes and see what's survivable in that. So one of the main jobs that I have and our money managers have is quell your emotions. Emotions are the enemy when you come to investing money. You got to just stand back and say, where's this going? But Trump is an easy guy to play. You see, he's actually made 3,700 securities trades this year. Buying and selling the market, because he can predicate where the market's going to go depending on what he's going to say. It's really quite amazing to me, And I haven't done that many trades this year, so he's trading more than I am, and he's the president of the United States. I guess he does it in sort of his off hours. But the markets are manipulated, the markets are affected because of his ramblings, type of thing. But that's okay for us. We like volatility. And but if I had to say, looking forward, the thing that, if I tend to be top down, looking forward, is that I think the debt accumulation in the Western world is insane, and sooner or later that's going to lead to inflation. Sooner or later, your dollar is going to be worth less and less and less. And that seems to be what's happening in markets. People say, well, wait a second, all this crisis is going on, but the U.S. market's going up. And the reason it's going up is people are trying to protect their purchasing power, and the best way to do that is through U.S. equities, because it's one of the few economies that's still growing. So there's lots of stuff going on here. The structure of Urbana is, we have voting and non-voting stock, and that's a good thing, because if we didn't, this company wouldn't exist. I always get pressure I remember I got pressure from shareholders when the asset value was $1.20 and the stock was 80 cents. Oh, so we can capture that 40 cents. Well, you can't. It's got private equity. It'd take you 5 years to unwind the companies. But everybody comes up with these brilliant ideas. But we would be faced with that pressure. We don't. We can take a long view. We don't have to worry about stuff like that. So that's how we think. That's how we structure our deals. We're contrarian investors. We invest on a big picture in our public markets. In the private markets, we look for companies that are benefiting from technology. Those would be the very simplistic way of describing it, and I'd be glad to try to answer questions. Now I got to do a review. This is the boring part. Maybe that was the boring part. I don't know. Anyway, I have to just review briefly what we did last year. The other one is the discount. That's the one that I get a discount. The stock is probably always going to trade at a discount. I think the gap is the greatest advantage for owning this company, because if you invest $8.50 and you get $14 working for you, that makes sense to me. Similarly, you know that management isn't going to dilute your position by doing a financing, selling common shares. I'm not going to sell common shares at a discount. So we have to grow this company organically. We can't be frivolous about issuing stock or to take over some other company. So it actually is a discipline if you look at it that way. And I'm not going to discern 10 minutes of my time trying to narrow the gap. We run a good company. It'll take care of itself. And sometimes actually the stock is traded at premium. If we own things you can't buy yourself. I mean, if you took it last year, 2025, the common shares were up 68.5%. The A shares were up 60%, and that includes the 13 cents dividend. Now, the net asset value grew by 15%. And you say, what's it? It went up, and the stock went up more. And part of that is that we own stuff that you could not buy yourself. That's the key. For example, Tetra Trust is one of our companies, and Tetra is a custodian for crypto assets. And that is a really interesting business in Canada. It's the only one that exists. And what we're doing with Tetra Trust and with Wealthsimple and other companies' purpose, coming out with a stable coin. And there's no way you can participate in the creation of stablecoin publicly than through Urbana. So that's, I think, what caused the gap to sort of narrow. Common share prices, most of that gain a lot of it was in the last quarter of the year, up about 24% on the A and 27% on the common. We had a crossover investment. Crossovers, and when we have private companies that become public. We have a company called Miami Exchange, which is an option exchange, kind of a new exchange around the edges of the options and derivatives market. But it went from a private company to a public company when they did their IPO, and that gave us a lift of about $20 million. There were significant improvements last year in things like Evolve, which is a manufacturer of exchange-traded funds. That's done really well. It's about $8.5 billion. When we came into it, they didn't even have $1 billion in assets. and that's done really well. And Blue Ocean Technologies, I'll touch on that in a bit. Dun, 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 dun. Like Evolve, their asset base, it wasn't 8.5, it was 11.8 billion at the end of the year. There was a transaction in Blue Ocean that added 14 million to our asset. We value, our private companies are valued on the last transaction. And if there hasn't been a transaction, say within a year, we don't go to comparables to see what is similar. And then we come up with a value. Then it goes to Frank, who complains about everything that we come up with, and they do their overlap as well. So they're a check and balance on what we do, and we all arm wrestle to see what we come up with. And it seems to work quite well so far. We commenced our second winter drilling program last year. We put about $1.5 million. When we have some extra cash, we'll do some drilling in Urbana. We want to keep the property in good standing, and just see if we can develop the interest and create value there. We don't want to find we don't have a mine. We want to find we do. We want to just keep doing a little bit more work. So we spent about $1.5 million last year just on the property. So typically an extra million or $1.5 million, which doesn't mean anything because we're running with about $650 million right now. So the odd $1 million, we'll just keep doing work to keep it in good standing. U.S. market helped us last year. Low unemployment and people, as they say, trying to protect purchasing power. And the U.S. has a low dollar. We don't see this because we're matched off against the U.S. dollar, but their dollar has come way down to every place else in the world. And we've seen, I think, a pretty buoyant market. And again, we've been working against a backdrop of a pretty mercurial and threatening U.S. president. And that's going to resolve. I think as Brendan said, geopolitical problems come and go, but the laws of economics are immutable. Eventually they will surface, and there will be a reality that comes in that. First part of this year, there's a quarterly there. Asset values at about 4.1% increase in the first quarter of this year. First part of June, a little bumpy because Trump is going crazy. I don't know what they're doing in Iran. I see they shot down a helicopter yesterday, and I don't know. We seem to be gearing for wars of some kind. I'll do a quick run through of our portfolio, and I hope this is helpful to you. We still have about $80 million in Tamarack and Whitecap resources. We're up about 62 million on that position. I see AI is now recommending that, by the way. But AI only works in what is. It works on existing reports. I've never made money from a research report from a dealer because dealer reports are predicated to raise corporate finance. So I'm glad to see they come, but they weren't there when I was first buying that. So AI tells you what is. It isn't going to tell you what will be. And that's part of our job, is anticipating the anticipators. We have a little investment in Canaccord, a competing dealer. Canaccord, if you look at Canada, there's been no new issues in Canada. Apotex is the first big issue that we've had in Canada. I don't know how many years, couple of years. So Canaccord does new financings, and when they do new financings, their stock goes through the roof. So we own a little bit of that. We started to buy a bit of Agnico Eagle. We like that company. We're late on gold. We did make money on gold early. We owed that company earlier, and we owed Mint, which is actually physical gold. Very small position at the present time, only just % or two, but we're going to build that up over time as the counterpoint to this debt that's accumulating. And that might be a 5-year process for us. But the volatility, for example, Agnico dropped $17 in one day, so I bought a couple hundred shares, a couple of thousand shares, to take a peek at that. We still, in the public markets, our big positions are the major U.S. banks. That is Bank of America, Citicorp, and Morgan Stanley, of course. And these positions have worked out well. Our cost in Morgan Stanley was $6.9 million. Current value is $73 million, so we're up $66 million in that position. Now, these are long positions, by the way. I can take a long view because I don't have people pressuring me to get out of a thing. But our performance levels have held through most of the year since basically annually compounded. Since 2002, we were about 15.5% annually compounded after tax. There's nothing close. There's nothing close to it. It beats all the indices. We match NASDAQ even with the NVIDIAs of the world, so we still match them on that basis. So those are a couple of the individual companies. Future, if I look at this year, we own Blue Ocean. Blue Ocean dominates overnight trading from Asia into America. That is, a retail investor in Singapore or Seoul can buy, you know, ICE or AT&T or anything, NVIDIA, just on his machine. And 90% of those trades go through Blue Ocean. And that's been it's been an interesting company. It's a privately held, what they call an ATS, an alternative trading system. And again, our investment there was $13 million. The current value is 87, so up about 73 million. And I'm always wary about saying these numbers to you because this isn't a gambler. You don't count your money while you're sitting at the table. The game isn't over yet. And that's an interesting business because I won't give you a bore with the details, but the exchanges are looking hungrily, if that's a word, at this business. But they haven't come into it yet because the plumbing that makes it all work, the exchanges aren't in position for that yet. They have to have what's called a consolidated order book. Depository trust has now come on side. So the mechanics aren't there behind it. But eventually, the exchanges are going to come in this business. And there's a good possibility they're going to eat our lunch. So it's like a game of chicken. At some point, we're going to sell that company. So my dream trade is if ICE, which controls the New York Stock Exchange, buys Blue Ocean from us for stock. I don't want cash. I want stock because I hopefully, with Frank's help, be able to do a tax-free rollover. And you can start working on that. Hopefully do a tax-free rollover, and then I can borrow against that. So there's several trades coming up in the next little while. It could be, there's right now we're at a stage in markets when there's a lot of big money looking for companies that we've had approaches at all kinds of companies, whether it be Evolve or these other companies. There are organizations now, just thinking in the area of Crosby, where you guys are right there, there's a lot of pieces in motion yet. So I would think for Urbana, this might be a next 6 to 12 months where we're unloading some of our private equity positions. I don't know for sure, but that's roughly where we're going. That's my ramble. I don't know whether that's helpful or confuses or tires you out. Well, thank you very much for coming. I'll be around for a while if you really want some chit chat. And thank you. We've had a good year, and thank you for all the team that's made this happen. Bren's group, Tom, all the people. I am so grateful we have such incredibly smart young people that make me look good. So thank you. You guys have a good day.